Could I remind members that this meeting will be recorded and ask members to note that mobile phones should be switched off as they interfere with recording. Tablet devices should be switched to mute, which is FN then F8. Can I remind members to declare their interests as appropriate throughout the meeting? And can I remind members, as agreed at the forward strategic meeting, that we keep the questions short and concise, that we'll have one question and then a supplementary on that topic per member. And then we will go round again for further questions as time allows. We will need to suspend the committee at 3:25 p.m. To allow the committee members to return to the Reservoir Bill second stage debate. The committee meeting will resume once the debate is finished. So if I could ask members to make their way back through here, declare the meeting open to the public. Agenda item number 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies of Oliver McMullen? Is one. Any other apologies? No further apologies. Agenda item 2, chairperson's business. I have nothing to address the committee with at this point. Agenda item number 3 then is minutes of the meeting, 28th of January 2014. Can I refer members to draft minutes of the meeting at 28th of January 2014 at pages 6 to 10. Are members content the draft minutes are accurate? If so, I will sign. Agreed?
Agreed, yep.
Matter arising, agenda item number 4. Can I refer members to the correspondence from the Department, pages 13 to 16, regarding the issues raised at the meeting of the 14th of January 2014 on remote sensing and the other issues? Members, having read the reply from the Department on this issue, remote sensing, their arguments are very weak, as we all know, and I would propose that we ask the Department to come before us as a committee to address us on this issue of remote sensing. Would members be in agreement? Joanne?
Yes, Chair. I think the real measure of us all is on this issue is how we help the farmers affected. As you know, Robin and myself held a very successful public meeting last week in Glarryford where there were 150 farmers present, and we have been in contact since that with senior DARD officials. We know it can be successful in other countries, so what's wrong? Have we the wrong type of hills here in Northern Ireland? I suggest what was suggested last week, certainly at that meeting, that the problem was with the department. So we'd welcome that. Bringing them before us.
By way of information, myself and Diane Dawes had a meeting on Friday with the officials, and they are basically saying that whilst the remote inspections were done in May time, they hadn't their IT system in place, and basically what they had to do was leave aside all of the remote sensing inspections to one side in order to meet the target, which leaves great pressure on those 2 specific areas that were selected by the department, that being the Bandside area of North Antrim leading into East Londonderry and Mid-Ulster, and then also the Fermanagh South Tyrone constituency, also around Clocker Valley. So it is, to me, a big issue, because whilst in other years they've had a similar number of inspection cases still needing to be processed, they were across the whole of Northern Ireland. Now we have 2 concentrated areas, which has a massive impact, and we're talking about laying out millions of pounds in any of those areas, which are compiling the problem even further. Joe, you want to come in?
Yeah, Chairman, you know that we raised this 2 or 3 weeks ago in relation to parts of the Ban and the Clocker Valley areas, and slowly we've heard the story, but I remain to be convinced of the technical difficulties involved. I think, Chairman, we need to have a stronger explanation by the Minister and by the Permanent Secretary. I think, given that the Minister is the head of policy and that the Permanent Secretary is the head of the administration at an operational level, we need to hear from the highest level what's going on, because this thing is continuing as a comedy of errors. But meantime, we have up to 3,000 farmers who feel very angry, very frustrated. I had one man in my office last week basically crying because he had to go and organise an extension to his overdraft facility, and he felt most annoyed they had to do that. He felt he was grovelling to the bank. And that's how I don't feel. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, so just to be clear, Joe, you're asking that the Minister and the Permanent Secretary attend the committee? Or?
Yes, I think we haven't heard from either of the two of them directly for a long time, and I think the sooner we hear Chairman from them, the better.
Okay, good call. Members agreed?
Definitely.
Agreed. Okay. Any other issues arising from matters arising members want to discuss? Are members willing to note the rest of the information then? Okay, agreed.
Agreed.
Agenda item number 5 then is the oral briefing. Can I refer members to the briefing papers from Rural Support Networks at pages 18 to 21? And can I welcome Wendy Kerr, South Antrim Community Network, Conor Core, Cookstown and Western Shores Area Network, Nicholas McCrickard, Down Rural Community Network, and Christopher Spence, Fermanagh Rural Community Network. Apologies if I got your name wrong there. Okay, thank you very much. Wendy, are you leading off for us?
No, Conor will actually lead today.
Conor, okay, Conor. I would ask you to be as brief as you can. Usually around 10 minutes is what we would give. Well, no, will not be too hard and fast, but if you can keep around 10 minutes, we'd greatly appreciate it. The members will go into questions. Unfortunately, I can't have all 4 of you answering one question. We don't have enough time for that, but sir, you'll know yourself who's best placed to answer the questions that are through at you. So without further ado, Conor, I'll let you lead off. You're very welcome here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Committee. Thanks for having us along here today to present to you this afternoon on an update on our particular work. We cover the Rural Community Development Support Service, otherwise known as RCDSS. It's a tender that has issued via DARD from 2012 right through to March 2015, and the contracts were issued under the boundaries of the new local government reform. The organisations that have been awarded this tender have been in existence and have been in place for quite a substantial number of years, and provide a very unique and strong rural infrastructure which covers all of rural Northern Ireland. With similar aims, the networks work together to deliver rural community development support, advice and technical support, etc., funded by DARD through the programme Tackling Rural Poverty and Social in Isolation Fund. Many of the contract holders draw membership as rural support networks from a whole range of community and voluntary sector organisations in their own areas of remit, including generic community development groups, social economy groups, play groups, farmers groups, youth, disability, ethnic minority, older people's groups, etc. We're here today to present to you because we wish to highlight what we deem to be a valuable contribution that the RCDSS is making to the rural economy through the practical support, advice and actions that we have been delivering over this last couple of years within our own rural communities. Now, many of the memberships, or most of them, are membership-based and therefore have a bottom-up approach. The management boards are elected annually with the primary aim of representing and supporting local groups and organisations to achieve more for the local communities through that bottom-up approach. The RCDSS, the Rural Community Development Support Service contract holders, seek to assist sustainable communities through their locally based staff, providing support and advice. And the networks are locally and quite widely recognised as providing an essential conduit between the rural communities, statutory bodies including local councils, providing communities with access to those decision makers and being a channel for expert local knowledge into the ground. And this model of the networks providing this work across rural NI is viewed, as I say, as an excellent model of good practice, enabling local communities to seek solutions to what their own particular local needs are by effective networking. So we believe that this delivery mechanism, this bottom-up approach and the existence of the rural support networks and others is particularly important given that there's a current debate around budgets, and at the early stage of the presentation we would ask this committee for your support in securing a sufficient budget post-March 2015 for this sort of work to continue. I'm going to hand on here quite quickly to Nicholas. I just want to maybe mention first of all what actually holds the networks together as contract holders. We are about supporting local communities. We have a very unique membership base and bottom-up approach. We are about identifying local needs at a local and sub-regional basis. We also focus in on partnership working, representation and maximising contact, particularly social and community participation, and we do that through working to ISO, which is a quality standard for the networks. The total contract to date is 890,000 from DARD, and this contributes very effectively to helping us roll out other DARD programmes and also other joint initiatives across different departments, for example the PHA and OFM, DFM, etc., which all benefit local rural communities. Our contract and other partner organisations carry additional resources, and to date we understand that to be in the region of a leverage of a ratio of 5 to 1. So if for every pound spent, we would deliver on collectively 5 to 1. So I'd like to pass on to Nicholas. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman and Committee, for the invitation. Just to the rest of us, are going to give you some practical examples of what we do. I'll start off by mentioning supporting the access to the Northern Ireland Rural Development Programme. So that's part of our contract. We have to support groups to access that. And very rough numbers here, probably on the Conservative side, over 120 villages have been directly supported by ourselves to develop village plans and then to implement projects as a result of that. And a lot of those would have be sort of dressing up the villages right through to building new extensions to community halls, walkways, footpaths, street lighting and all of the other bits and pieces that go to rural life. We directly engage with the local action groups, the LAGs, in doing that, and with individuals, farmers and farm families as well. And we've assisted in particular many farmers and farm family members to make applications to the Farm Modernisation Programme, running farm safety workshops, fast tracking into IT, which helps to deal with the bureaucracy of running a farm business, and farm diversification projects of all sorts. And through that LAG work, we've brought forward a number of programmes of activities through direct engagement with rural communities in achieving the objectives for their area. We do, as Conor says, help to identify the local needs and support the LAGs in addressing those needs. In our current tender, we have enabled community and voluntary groups to draw down support from the RDP with interventions such as promoting and circulating the information about the programme, helping groups to apply, helping unsuccessful groups to reapply, facilitating good practice visits to other good projects, holding funding workshops, ensuring community participation in village renewal action plans, and that was key this year, in the last couple of years, trying to get people involved in writing their own action plan, and also to support groups, as I mentioned, to carry out the actions. We also support groups with governance and procurement assistance. That's becoming more important and a big part of what we do. A significant number of our own board members and our staff sit as social partners on the boards of the LAGs, ensuring the funding is targeted at community need. And they also meet regularly with other agencies to ensure local programmes are complementary. Indeed, the LAGs refer all applicants to ourselves, the networks, for assistance. This reduces the need for direct employment of staff in the LAGs. And for my own network in County Down, just at a rough count, we have supported 51 projects to secure funding from the NRDP in the last couple of years, and there's a huge number of projects have now been realised as a result of that. Everything from doing the village plans through, as I mentioned, to extensions, refurbishment of halls, to play parks, walking routes, even mountain rescue equipment in my case. Another bit was supporting strategic and cooperation projects, and an example there would be the Railway Preservation Society of Ireland applied to GROW in South Antrim, and were awarded a strategic project grant of nearly 800,000 to assist with the creation of a unique heritage visitor attraction. So that's fallen into line now and coming on stream, and is very timely, and that is the 50th anniversary for the establishment of that organisation. Networks are also able to provide help and assistance with applications, procurement, and further identify potential future funders to sustain the growth of such projects. Big problem was match funding, so we had to find other funding to match the 25%, and we were very successful, I think, in doing that. And in our case, even doing things such as loaning groups a bit of bridging money, if we have it in our own resource, to allow them to claim back from the LAG. So there's all sorts of innovative ways of trying to assist. On another objective of ours, assisting the development of the rural economy, we've raised awareness of the social economy and the rural economy in general through media, our own media, electronic and other means, and current social economy projects. We've held events and workshops with DARD to promote the social economy, and some of us manage social economy projects directly. We also have offered training such as the Central Procurement Directorate information sessions. So moving on to, apart from the Northern Ireland Rural Development Programme, a big part of our work is also the Tackling Rural Poverty and Social Isolation Programme that Conor mentioned. I think it's handier to call it TRIPSI because it just looks that way. So in terms of TRIPSI, we've helped DARD to deliver a range of things such as the Farm Families Health Checks Programme, almost 4,000 health checks delivered already. The Rural Challenge, many of us are involved with helping groups to attract that. And there's now 1,800 beneficiaries in the small grants programme there. We've promoted and assisted Boost to target over 800 unemployed young people. And in terms of rural support, we have promoted their services and activities. And one of our proudest things, most of the contract holders are involved in MARA, and we have visited now at this point over 10,000 households with over 26,000 referrals as a result of that, and we're still ongoing. That project's still ongoing. I'm going to hand over to Wendy from South Antrim Community Network now.
Thanks, Nicholas. So just to inform the committee then on a wee bit about development capacity and leadership and how we address that. There are 16 locally staffed offices and resource centres maintained as a direct result of the RCDSS contract. This maintains 28 direct jobs and 54 indirect jobs which are funded through other means but complement the work of the RCDSS contract. We have approximately 868 member groups registered in accordance with the Charities Act legislation, with over approximately 10,000 volunteers, and around 102 of those are volunteer board members on each of the RCDSS organisations. Just an idea on development group capacity, we've had over 3,500 requests for supporting and including development assistance, funding information and project grant application assistance responded during the year. We've had over 100 networking, good practice visits, information, consultation events hosted and organised. We've provided over 140 information bulletins to community and voluntary organisations as well. The RCDSS have representation on over 90 strategic theme-based partnerships, including health and wellbeing initiatives, and we have as well tackled around PR improvements, including reaching a younger target audience through initiatives such as Facebook and other social media outlets, and also with the churches forums and different things in different areas as well. We've provided over £16,000 worth of free training and advice workshops to community and voluntary groups, such as PR and media training, governance, community venue sustainability, collaboration, risk management, financial management, capital build, legal status, procurement workshops, funding clinics, just to name but a few. And I'm going to pass over now to Christopher, who will discuss the unionist element.
Thank you, Wendy. As part of the RCDSS tender, for the new council areas of Fermanagh and Omagh, Londonderry and Strabane, Armagh, Banbridge, Craigavon and Newry-Mourne and Down, we have secured a tender to deliver a community development service for the unionist population living in rural border areas, which consist with renewing communities, the government's response to the report of the Task Force on Processing Working Class Communities. This includes assisting individuals and communities, including farmers, farm families, to access information and advice on the economic assistance available in rural areas, and provides support working towards the economic and social sustainability of rural communities. There is also a focus on improving inter-community and cross-community relations by, for example, addressing misconceptions, building trust, creating space for dialogue and discussion. The main core of the work carried out is actively engaging with hard-to-reach individuals and groups by providing network opportunities, for example, best practice visits, creating a space for difficult conversations, providing opportunities for them to engage with leaders of institutions, councils and the wider voluntary community sector. Practical examples of this in the Fermanagh and Omagh council area was the establishment of a steering group that now sits quarterly and involves both Fermanagh District Council and Omagh District Council representatives, Ulster Unionist Party, Democratic Unionist Party, Orange Order, victim and survivor groups and other local agencies in the area. This is bringing together unionist community representatives within the new council area and building relationships within the unionist community and wider society. In a practical sense, this service helps individuals on the ground with practical training and capacity building, allowing for improvement in general capacity of local people within the rural area. We support groups applying for funding, improvements to places of worship, hall sustainability, farmers and farm families with availing of funding, training and support, opportunities such as IT training and farm safety awareness. All of this is undertaken through the structures of Fermanagh Rural Community Network and Oma Forum for Rural Association in one area. All of these actions directly make a difference to the quality of life of the individuals within the local community. And I'll hand back to Conor now.
Okay, Mr Chairman and Committee, just a few key messages. We believe that the vibrant rural communities are an essential part of Northern Ireland's future, that the Rural Community Development Support Service contracts are about valuing people, putting people at the centre, and is a very important asset of what we have as rural. We provide, through this contract, a very localised, coordinated service to rural people, which the Executive has rolled out through its TRIPSI programme, and obviously supports the sustainability of rural communities. The holders of the contract bring value for money, interdependence, and build cross-community linkages, and also provide coordination and cooperation for those actions underpinned by quality assurance. And we appreciate this investment in the sector for rural community development to promote the Rural Community Development Programme and a wide range of other government initiatives. So just to finish off, we would ask that the committee recognise the contribution that TRIPSI is making to the wider rural community, and acknowledge the level of interest within that programme from within the rural community generically, and also the impact that local networks in delivering can make using a bottom-up approach. And obviously then, as I mentioned at the start, that we recognise that there is a need to secure sufficient budget in diminishing budgetary and monetary times to ensure that these community development actions are met at a local level and continue into the future post-March 2015. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much everyone for your presentation and for trying to keep it as concise as possible. I know it's a challenge whenever you want to sell your ware and tell us all of the good work you do. Just to remind members, just if we can have your questions focused and then a supplementary on that issue, and I will go round again depending on how many people is listed here for questions. If I can just go straight into questions on this. And again, you're coming to the point now where you need reassurance around the future of your organisation and funding. And I hope that the Minister is willing and is able to engage with you on that. But with regard to your current service requirements, what do you see in those that are not fit for purpose and are stifling to the work you do? And I suppose, whilst I know all the good work you do in the areas of which you reach, what are the weak or the blind spots for the networks? Where do you want to go where you can't go because of the current service requirements and or the budget that you have for that work? Conor, I don't know if you're taking it on or...
Okay, I think Nicholas is taking it.
Okay, Nicholas.
I'm not sure if there's much within the service requirements that are not fit for purpose, Chair. However, the environment we live in and work in is always changing. So as we go forward, we're going to have to adapt that. And the pattern has been for the last sort of 4 changes of the service requirements, which we've had. We update the service requirements every 6 months with DART officials, and we have altered it significantly at each time. So if there's anything in there that has moved on, we'll move on from it, we'll add, and the DART officials are happy to suggest new ones or indeed listen to what we're suggesting. So I'm happy enough that that'll be always refreshed. Some of them, are harder to achieve than others. The promotion of the social economy projects per se, getting actual projects with volunteers that are willing to run large social economy projects, difficult one to do, but it's not one we're going to give up on. And in fact, there's more of an interest than ever in doing that. And if we tie that into procurement from government and trying to get procurement from local councils and whatnot, there's more of an interest in that as well. So I think we have to work on that one. It's at the minute it's still it's an education process as much as anything, and so that area is one that we have to. Your second part of your question, sorry, Chairperson, was
basically just what do you see you need to be doing but you can't because of maybe the restrictions around the service requirements or and/or budget funding.
Okay.
Things that you need to, you want to do, or you want
Yeah.
to, you see needs doing, you can't do it because of your funding.
It's a very good question. I just wanted to clarify it, but we are always in that bind. The demand on our staff, and in my case, I have 2 full-time equivalent people working across most of County Down, from North Down right down to Newry, and you're always in demand. Most recently, we're challenged by the Charity Commission in that they are asking us to become helpers to roll out the new conversion from company to charity registration in Northern Ireland. And we're nervous about it, but we went along and we learnt and heard what has to be done, and we'll try and absorb that. But it's a difficult game to play. We always manage to balance it. We could always do with more resources, but I think I would actually say there's a fair budget for a big piece of work at the minute. So I'm not, we're not going to be holding out the begging bowl looking for additional resources in that respect.
So you actually have flexibility in your system whereby you can change as you go along in a 6-month
Yeah,
period?
I think what our structures also benefit us in that. So in most of our cases, we also run health programmes funded by the Public Health Agency and other bits and pieces. And sometimes we can draft in people at a moment's notice to beef up a particular demand we've had, or if a group indeed needs a bit of support, we can bring in other programmes to deliver that support. And indeed, our links to other to local council, to other officers of other institutions, and in particular the range of things under TRIPSI, we can drag them into to solve problems as well. So that flexibility and cross-working does pay off.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to hand out, can I just remind members then that the one question and then a supplementary 2, and then we'll go round again if need be. So Byrne, Deputy Chairperson.
Thanks, Chairman. First of all, I want to welcome the presentation and the contribution that you've made to rural development and community activities in their areas over a long period of time. In relation to the service requirements assisting development of the rural economy, how do you monitor that, manage that and evaluate it?
Okay, can I respond to that? In assisting, sorry, can you just repeat in assisting?
Yeah, number 2, assisting development of the rural economy.
Yeah.
How would you manage that, monitor that and evaluate that on an ongoing basis?
Okay. Well, first of all, within the contract, there is a very stringent monitoring and evaluation requirement, which we meet on a monthly basis with the officials from DARD in relation to meeting the objectives and aims, and obviously meeting all of the actions that we have set out within each 6-monthly plan. So we monitor that on a very stringent manner on a monthly basis, and meet DARD on that. In terms of the rural economy is as where we're coming from the community development background, is a composite of a whole series of groups, from play groups right through to the farming organisations and the generic community development groups, and we monitor the work that we do in terms of interventions with those groups, and that normally means numbers at events, numbers of events, people turning up at those events that either we run or we have assisted other organisations or the other parts of DARD to ensure attendance at and participation within. So in terms of evaluation, we have carried it out an evaluative pre-evaluation in the first year of the contract, and as far as I'm led to believe, there is currently a tender out within DARD to evaluate the whole programme over the 3-year period, and that probably will be made available to us sometime at the start of March, which is the start of the 3rd year of the programme.
Last supplementary, Chairman.
Yeah.
Then in relation to your advice to our assistance to community groups, number 3, specialist advice to assist social economy organisations. How specialised is your advice? Does that mean that a project doesn't require a private sector consultant? Can you do the work that they would do?
Chairman, I'll answer. Yes, I would say in a lot of cases we would do that. We can deliver support in terms of legal and technical assistance for...
What about the economic appraisal of a project?
There's a limit on the level of what's required by the funder. Sometimes would limit what we could do. We would have pro formas. We'd be happy to do basic business plans and economic appraisals. We would assist in the case of LAGs, the LAG staff, to make sure the information is available for them to do those. So in most cases, we've been able to assist with internally the rural development programme to do that. But in cases of village plans and things, as a rule, it does have to be tendered out. So what we then help the group, in my case in Down, we helped numerous groups to tender for the architect now, or for the consultants, and manage the consultants as well. So sometimes volunteers need assistance with handling that kind of level of work. So we're there to help them handle these consultants and make sure at the end of the day they'll get a good product out of it, because sometimes there can be a mixture of quality.
Yeah, John, thanks.
John Dawson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank you for your briefing also? Yesterday in the House we had an excellent debate on the improvement of mental health facilities and awareness for farmers and rural dwellers. So in your work with supporting the vital rural communities, which it's vital the work that you do you sense an increasing need for this? And you touched, Nicholas, and you said you run health programmes. Is this something you're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that one there. Thank you, Chair. Yes, Joanne, we would also have public health agency funded projects such as suicide prevention development officer workers, which would allow also for small grants from that there as well, and general niche health initiatives, which covers 27 themes of health. That's just an example of what we offer in-house, but with the collaboration of all the projects with the RCDSS, as we said earlier, that everything complements each other, and we would certainly see an increase in the need for farmers to access mental health, for the rural community to access mental health, to be informed of it, to understand what services are out there and what services are available. And that's what we are promoting at the moment. For example, Southampton Community Network have about 160 member groups, and from that there we would promote regularly on a bi-monthly basis the suicide prevention services that are available out there and how they can access them. And then also any events that we would do, we would also have information in that available too.
That's to be very, very welcome, and I commend you on that. So, obviously the need's increasing, because I certainly see an increase even through my own constituency office. Are you supporting, are you expanding this? Are you identifying funders which could help improve the mental health of farmers? Where do you take it next?
Yeah, well, certainly we were also part of the event in Greenmount recently with both the cross-departmental work with Minister O'Neill and Minister Pitts on identifying and the consultation process on how we can move forward with this here. And obviously we work very closely with rural support, promoting rural support services and valuing their contribution as well to the mental health of farmers in the rural community as well. So yeah, we would see it as looking at more cross-departmental work, looking at how we can move this on in the future, and even be part of the RCDSS contract for future.
I know in my own constituency last week there was an event in Craigavon Civic Centre, and the Samaritans now had a Pacific leaflet printed on farmers and the issue of mental health. So it is something I commend you, but keep on with it and doing what you can to improve it.
I could maybe just add a wee bit to what Wendy said there, Joanne. And in terms of last year in the snow issue, we just sometimes you have to react to things, and we set up a farmers grouping, and one of the issues was mental health and the stress on them, and we brought speakers in from rural support to address that group, and again would plug rural support where we can, if at all possible.
I commend you for it, but keep pushing and expanding, and because it is unfortunately an increasing problem that we're having. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Declan McLeod.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I want to commend the excellent work that you're doing. I think it's only when we get opportunities like this here that we get a full appreciation of the amount of work that you do. And a few weeks back we had the Young Farmers Group up, and again it gave us a good breadth of a good insight to the work that you do. And some of the stuff John actually mentioned, what I was going to say there, the reference to Mara, that's very impressive, getting to 10,000 households and 26,000 referrals. And indeed, some of the work you do in the more isolated areas, getting hard to reach people. And that was a very dominant theme during our motion yesterday, that the rural communities are very isolated and people are hard to reach. And that is actually working. Indeed, in my own constituency of West Rowland, I know very well of the great work that the network down there, OMA Forum, has done down there. I don't know where Costa comes on. They used to do that.
Yes.
I'm also aware of the work that Lorraine and the Costa Group does as well, of helping rural community organisations boost their capacity to lever in funding and help them get match funding. So I think that sometimes you are underappreciated for all the work that you do. So obviously, I suppose I'm picking up here. Obviously, the funding sort of there's a bit of uncertainty around the funding post 2015. I presume I'm correct in saying that there. And could you give me a sense of how that is impacting upon yourselves in terms of trying to plan ahead for the projects that you have in mind or have in the pipeline?
Well, thanks for your comforting words in terms of the work that we do. The funding is a 3-year funding package, and it was tendered, and we obviously had to tender for that. So the majority of the contract holders are local rural support networks, as you've just referred to a couple of them there. We have been funded in different ways over this last virtually 15 years through essentially DARD's intervention. And there's always been opportunities ahead of us in terms of being able to fund rural community development on the ground. So yes, there will potentially be difficulty in terms of where the funding may come from in the future. But this isn't European funding. This is the executive's funding, and we've been very grateful that that has been funded in such a way. So we're hoping that there will be an opportunity once more that the executive would place its trust in this sort of work. And you mentioned there the sorts of work that we do. It's the very nature of the fact that we are local, that we have got linkages and networks at a local level, and can react, as Nicholas has referred to particular instances or cases, that makes us, I suppose, the networks that we are able to react, we're able to link in, and we're able to do an effective job quite effectively, but also quite efficiently. So in terms of the overall budget, yes, it's about £890,000, and yeah, we would like to see an extension of that, obviously, but we're not here about asking for additional money.
And so just here, so what you're saying, so there would be particular projects that potentially are at risk if you can't see beyond 2015. Would that be right, or would it? Anyway,
absolutely. I mean, there's other programmes running alongside all the time. So down our way, there's a fisheries local action group now formed, and we're helping them to roll that out. That's now starting when we're nearly coming to an end. And there's other issues like staff. Just simply yesterday, one of my staff said, "What's happening beyond next year?" Individuals look for where their next mortgage is coming from, I suppose, internally. And if we lose the skill levels that we have coming towards the end of these kinds of programmes, it's very risky. And then that leaves groups that they've built up a huge relationship with, projects that they've handled potentially in the lurch. So that is an issue for all of us. But we've been well used to it for the last 15 years, Declan, and we know that DARD are very supportive of the work we do. Albeit that it's not trumpeted that often, but it's there, and we're hopeful we can work it out with yourselves.
Just can I add to it? If we are being seen as, and have been seen in a number of public forums, that we are like an anchor to ensure that there's good uptake and participation in particular programmes, whether it be executive or European programmes, we find that is the benefit for the community, but also the benefit to ensure that the funder or the provider gets to the community. So at risk would be that conduit or that channel to local people. For example, MAR would be an excellent example of how that works, where we actually put people out to knock on 10,000 doors. 75% of the MARA delivery agents or contract holders are local rural support networks.
Okay.
I just nip out now to ask a question, detailed question time.
Okay, we're just on the limit of a quorum. William Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I suppose my question has been fairly well covered, but can I also thank you for the work you do? And I mean, Mara, just this morning my office referred a family to that problem. So I mean, certainly many are, even from Irish perspective as representatives, it's very useful that we can refer people on, and probably take some of the burden off some of our staff too. So it's great that is available. In relation to, I think you said 890,000. Is that over a period of 3, 4, or 5 years? How much is that, or is that one per year? I think you said
That's the annual budget, isn't it?
Yeah.
annual
Budget.
yearly budget.
Yeah.
890,000.
Covers the whole of rural Northern Ireland, and there's 9 organisations involved in it.
Okay, so when you break it down, it's not
So
as big.
100,000 each. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's okay. That's all I want to know. Okay.
Okay, Tom Buchanan.
Yeah, can I again welcome you here and thank you for the real contribution that you have made to the rural communities out there. And I do know, with working with some of the folk here from West Tyrone, of the tremendous work they are doing in a rural constituency that's greatly isolated. But how do you see your work has helped the rural community groups in terms of sustainability, in terms of taking ownership and leadership and moving forward into new initiatives?
Well, certainly just around the development of their capacity and leadership, so providing access to training and courses, helping them to look at future sustainability, what programmes they were running at the minute, and how they can look at new initiatives and new things ahead of that there. Looking at just basic logistics of their own group, how inclusive are they of the local community? Do they need to bring in more volunteers? What assistance those volunteers then need? We do understand that volunteers get burnt out because it's left down to the 2 or 3. So it's trying to just allow give our advice and assistance on, spreading out maybe the roles and responsibilities of that there, and building people's capacity and leadership and working on that there, accessing funds that they never knew existed before. Just all initiatives like that there. So.
And have you seen a growth within the groups themselves, in a sense, where they're taking the initiative, if you like, to branch out and move forward?
Yeah, can I just say that have been involved for quite a while in rural community development. You do see groups of 6, 7, 8 years ago that are now getting into the stages where they're able to access rural development programme monies, for example, and other monies. One of the first things that we do with the group is look at their competencies and look at where the gaps are and what they need to do to ensure that they can give confidence to the funder that they're able to deliver a particular programme. And we start off, and all these groups, over the years, start off quite small with small grants of maybe £300-400 moving into the £10,000 programmes before maybe 10 years down the line being able to look at a much larger programme and project. So competency is something we look at, and we do that through a particular framework that we use.
Could I just add again there, Tom? I think it's an interesting question. I was thinking back, some of us here are getting grey-haired. We're here that long. When I think of the early 90s, when the first rural development programme came out, you could have counted the number of projects, in the dozens. And now, despite what we all think, the growth in community activity, if you like, in rural areas has increased, undoubtedly. And the range of groups in every village are there to match all the needs. Now, they come and go, and that's why you need this consistent support, because volunteers, as Wendy says, will burn out and disappear. The cycle is always moving, but I think the cycle is generally I have no doubt, it's on an upward trend. Every town and village have good, active, generally speaking, good active play groups, youth groups, right through to young farmers were mentioned, right through to community organisations, regeneration groups, social economy projects. Social economy being up there, and you have to start somewhere and you work them up there, and we're there to support all of that.
Okay. Just on that note, no other members have indicated they want to ask questions, but I will take them if they want to come in again. On the question and the debate that's raging around the new rural development programme funding, and the facts are that more than likely we're going to have a limited pot, a lesser pot, and a smaller bucket with regards to funding, which will mean then that funding will have to be more targeted, to hit and to make a difference. What's your fear as a body, and this might be hard to ask for one answer here, but what, as a body, have you any fears, concerns for the future going forward?
In terms of the rural development programme and specifically the priority 6, whereby the community, the farming, the environmental sectors, etc., have been funded in the past, including the monies that have come through the LAGs, the local action groups. We have discussed this and we had a number of meetings on this, obviously over the consultation period of the Rural Development Programme 2014 to 2020, and we see that there needs to be a balanced approach as well, whereby there's no one sector that is left out in the cold, that the Rural Development Programme is much more just than communities. Communities are made up of people from the various different sectors, whether it be a farming sector, whether it be young people in play groups or older people in older groups. So we would ask that we had a balanced view is taken in terms of a balanced approach across the Rural Development Programme. Otherwise, one sector will lose out.
Okay. Joe Byrne, Deputy Chairperson.
Yes, Chairman, I want to recognise the amount of work that's done by OFRA and the Dent Interchange, particularly Dent Interchange in the whole rural parts of Strabane district. In relation to the 5-to-1 ratio that was mentioned earlier, Conor, 890k per annum you get directly from DARD. Where are you able to ramp it up to a factor of 5-to-1? Where is the co-funding coming from? That?
Okay, 890,000 doesn't always represent 100% of what each of these rural support contract holders will spend on this particular programme. So, for example, in Mid-Ulster, where I am, I have to find maybe another 20-25% to ensure that the programme is delivered. We find that through other programmes, but we also, in terms of racking up that 5-to-1, we have got a whole series of other initiatives. For example, the PHA. In Mid-Ulster, we have about 5 different programmes that are funded by the PHA. So the very fact that we are there ensuring that local need is being met by local programmes and local projects, it ensures that that money comes into any particular area where the need is demonstrated.
We have it coming in, Joe, from public health, and most of us have public health agency projects and programmes. In our case, we have it from public health agency, fairly significant programme. We have lottery, sport NI, physical activity coaches. We have local councils, OFM, DFM. There's a few peace programmes, so it's that kind of levering in from other places. And we're only talking about the income of the organisations here. We could give you other figures, and although it's always hard to quantify, about how much we then draw in on behalf of groups from other funders, but that gets into the multi-millions when you're into that sort of figures because of projects and capital projects and all the rest. So it's many more than that. The 5-to-1 ratio is just the other funders that we pull in, and many of them now are also tendered. They're not actually grants anymore. That we're having to work for to tender for
service level agreements.
Service level agreements.
That's fine, John. Thanks.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much for coming here and presenting to us and educating us even more on the work that you do. We all, I think, as individual constituents, MLA, see the work and the value that you bring to your areas. So, again, thank you very much for all your efforts and your work and for coming here today. I am of the mind to write to the Minister members some summer to what we've done with the Ulster Farmers Union. Just raising awareness that we are, as a committee, general support of the work that the rural networks do. Our members mind it in that same way.
Yep.
Okay.
I much appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you.
Good.
Oh, sorry, just one question. The Minister has engaged with you with
Yes.
regards to post-March.
Yeah, and we're hoping to meet the Minister in the next couple of weeks as well.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, members, moving on. This will be maybe a very important, certainly a very important, but might be a very meaty next session here. Agenda item number 6 is the oral briefing DARD, an update on the development of the Rural Development Programme 2014-2020. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 23 to 26 and the briefing papers from the department at pages 27 to 83. Can I welcome Clem McMaster, Grade 5, and Lorraine Linus, Grade 7. You're very welcome to the committee as always. It seems to be, Clem, you're here every week.
No, we've had a lot recently.
When you are the Great Contempt,
My heart feels for you, it really does. But you're very welcome here to the committee as always on this very important issue of the new RDP and the development of it from 2014 to 2020. Members will have already had the chance to read the briefing papers, substantial as they were. So if I can ask you to take up to 10 minutes to address the committee. I do believe this will be a meaty subject and session here, so we have got time, members, to go round and ask questions, but we'll ask you to be concise and ask one question on a particular topic and then a supplementary on that topic, and we can go round as often as we feel we need to until Colette and Lorraine fall down with exhaustion. But without further ado, Colette, are you leading off or Lorraine?
Yes, I'll lead off just briefly at the beginning then. So thank you, Mr Chairman and committee members, for the opportunity to provide you with a further update briefing following the public consultation on the 2014-2020 Rural Development Programme. Lorraine Linus, who's with me, is leading on developing the new programme. The public consultation on DARD's proposals for the next Rural Development Programme closed on the 21st of October 2013. The Department's consultation set out the potential range of schemes in the next programme, the delivery considerations, the funding issues and the indicative cost ranges for the proposed schemes. We sought views on whether any funds should be transferred from Pillar 1 to Pillar 2 and how the proposed schemes should be prioritised in the event that there were insufficient funds. A total of 175 consultation responses were received from a range of organisations and individuals. We presented a summary of these consultation responses to the committee at its meeting on the 3rd of December. On 24th of December, we published the responses, apart from one, on the DARD website. We advised the committee that we would come back to provide a further update when we had completed our analysis of the consultation responses, and that's the purpose of our presentation today. The paper that we've sent to the committee provides a high-level analysis of the responses to the public consultation on the DARD proposals for the next Rural Development Programme. It includes a summary of the comments received along with DARD's response to those comments, and where appropriate, we clarified if the suggestions made by consultees cannot be supported by the EU legal framework. Turning to budget matters then, funding for the Rural Development Programme is drawn from a number of sources. The amount of funding that has been allocated to us from Europe is approximately €227 million. The committee will appreciate that a very important factor in determining the final shape and size of the next Rural Development Programme will be the total budget available. Following the Department's analysis of the consultation responses on the 20th of December, the Minister announced her intention to transfer 7% of the Pillar 1 allocation to Pillar 2 to help fund rural development activities, and this would have provided an additional €137.5 million to the overall rural development budget. As the committee is aware, the decision was challenged by the Finance Minister on the basis that the issue should have been referred to the Executive, and following the court decision, the Minister sought urgent executive approval for a transfer of 7%. As executive agreement was not reached by the deadline, as a consequence, a zero rate of transfer for Northern Ireland has been notified by DEFRA to the EU Commission. In the absence of any transfer of funds from Pillar 1 to Pillar 2, we are currently considering how the next programme can be funded in addition to the EU allocation. The extent to which all or parts of the DARD proposals for the new programme are implemented will depend on the available resources. The Department's aim is to develop a balanced package of funding for the next Rural Development Programme based on the identified needs in order to improve the competitiveness of the agri-food sector, protect and enhance the environment and countryside, and improve the quality of life in rural communities here. A Rural Development Programme stakeholder consultation group was established in November 2012 with the aim of working with DARD in the development of the new programme. This group has representatives from all the key stakeholders representing farmer, broader agri-food, environmental and wider rural community interests. The group met 4 times before the launch of the public consultation, and it has provided DARD with valuable feedback on the proposals as they were being developed. The stakeholder group met again recently on the 15th of January to consider the summary of consultation responses from DARD's analysis. Stakeholders noted the comments made and DARD's assessment, and we've made some minor changes to the summary as a result. Most stakeholders at the meeting expressed concern and disappointment about the potential reduction in the budget for rural development following the notification of a zero rate of transfer. The point was made that the Agri-Food Strategy Board's recommendations going for growth could not be addressed through the programme without additional funding being made available. Stakeholders felt that the next programme should be designed to meet the identified needs and were concerned that the proposed schemes may have to be prioritised and reduced in line with the budget that is finally agreed. Turning to the next steps, the Department will be continuing to work to finalise the draft Rural Development Programme, taking into account the views expressed in the public consultation, the advice from the Rural Development Stakeholder Consultation Group, the Executive's future response to Going for Growth and the available budget. The summary document that was provided to the committee today will be published on the DARD website after this meeting. The Department would welcome any comments that the committee would like to make at this stage on the summary of consultation responses and DARD's analysis. And that's all I want to say at this point, so thank you. We're happy to answer any questions, provide clarification.
Okay, Claire, thank you very much for your presentation and for being so concise on that. Really appreciate that. We will go into questions. Of course, this is a very important issue for all the rural community, not least the farming community and everyone who lives in our village areas and space. I suppose the obvious question for me is, with the consultation done, with the transfer from Pillar 1 to Pillar 2 settled, what are your time scales and time frames now with regards to taking proposals to the Executive? And how do you see that mechanism now working after the court case?
Well, in terms of the timescales, still, I suppose there's still quite a number of decisions to be made still, and including the important one in there is to be clear on what the final budget would be for the programme. So it's not clear at this stage as what the timescale will be for that. We're currently looking at the options within the department in terms of funding, and open to exploring any other options that there are in relation to funding matters. In terms of bringing the programme through to its next stages, one of the things we're also conscious about, there was the legal judgment on the day of the case, and we're still expected is the written judgment. That's still to come. So whenever we have that again, we'll have to assess what that's saying as well. So there are a number of things to be taken into account, and before we are clear on what our time frames are for the way forward. But certainly we're continuing to work to, and we'll continue to work with the Rural Development Stakeholder Consultation Forum to develop the shape of the programme and the design of the measures within that programme. Until we get the budget sort of finally confirmed, we can't sort of take final decisions on the size of the programme or the scale of that programme or the content of that, so that's difficult to do at this stage, but a number of things still to be worked through.
So am I right in saying, because this could be a chicken and egg scenario here, whereby you could have the Executive asking of the DARD Minister her plans and proposals, and might I even say, dare I say, bids for funding, before then the Executive as a whole could agree funding. So are we now, says DARD, saying that you would want to see what the budget will be and what funding will occur from the Executive before then you would take forward plans and proposals and bids? You understand? Could well be a catch-22 here, a chicken and egg.
Yeah.
So I'm wanting to just establish what is the clear process for the department now going forward. Is it a wait and see what the Executive are willing to give in pounds and pence, and then shape the rural development programme on that, or is it, will DARD have the bids and the proposals in place to go then to the Executive and say, this is what we hope to do, and this is how much we needed for to do it?
Yeah, and I think it is a bit of both things ongoing, really, because certainly if we're coming to a point where we're bidding for money, then we need to be able to be clear about what it is we're bidding for, and there need to be a clear sort of rationale for any bid. So that's something that we'll be continuing to do, is develop the proposals that we would hope that would be in the programme. We continue developing those. In terms of, in relation to, for example, going for growth, the Minister's already been clear that she will need to put in additional funding to fully address the recommendations that have been made by the Agri-Food Strategy Board.
But surely going for growth is a side to the rural development programme.
Well, the rural development programme and what we had envisaged was that the programme itself would be a key vehicle to actually delivering on some of the key recommendations that the Agri-Food Strategy Board has made in going for growth. Certainly in relation to the Farm Business Improvement Scheme that the Board recommended that DARD should address. In putting together the proposals for the Rural Development Programme, we did seek to take account of what the Board had recommended in terms of what it would like to see in a Farm Business Improvement Scheme. So actually the proposals that are in there, we could and we envisage developing those in order to shape a Farm Business Improvement Scheme that would help to address the aims and objectives of the going for growth. But it is clear, and the Minister has been clear, that she would need to draw in additional funding to be able to do that through the programme, and clearly in terms of the allocation that we know is there currently from the EU, there would need to be additional funding over and above that to deliver on the aims and objectives of the Board in terms of going for growth, as they had recommended investment of up to 250 million in a Farm Business Improvement Scheme. That clearly subject to the industry demand for that sort of scheme.
And of course we all know that 250 million of an improvement scheme will just about wipe out the whole of the RDP. So I suppose that's one of the reasons why we couldn't really have all what we wished for agri going for growth within the RDP. Just to be sure again, because I need to go back and tell me exactly, is it now the Minister's decision or position to actually have in place proposals and bids to then go forth to the Executive in a timely fashion in order that she seeks funding? We talk about the chicken and egg scenario again, but is it clearly now the direction of travel that DARD will go to the Executive with their bids and their proposals?
I think we're still having discussions within the department and with the Minister, so she hasn't, decided what really, firmly what's going to be the next stages in that. But I know from the point of view of the going for growth, for example, and that is a key thing, because that's something that has already been identified, that we can't, and through, as you say, in order to provide a balanced rural development programme, we couldn't meet the sort of requirements of the Agri-Food Strategy Board in terms of the investment going from the existing sort of budgetary levels of the rural development programme.
But are we not, and I must press you on this, because are we not then clouding rural development with the report, the Agri-Food Report, Strategy Report, in the fact that there's no way that everything that is wished for in the Agri-Food Report was ever going to be realised through rural development? So is it not better that the Minister, DARD Minister, takes her bids and proposals on rural development, which may have elements of what is in the report, but have that as a rural development strategy to then go forward to the Executive and ask for relevant funding on rural development? And then if she needs more money on agri-food, then that can be in our discussion and our debate.
Well, there's the range of options, and the Minister's considering just what will be the next steps in this. But the Rural Development Programme in itself, the three key objectives in there are competitiveness, environment, and the wider rural issues. So the competitiveness objective matches very closely with the sort of aims and objectives of the going for growth recommendations. So it's not yes, it would be hard to separate the two in a sense entirely, because if we're going to take invest in competitiveness, then there are recommendations there to look at in terms of competitiveness that have already been made. But I think overall, and the Minister has said that what she's seeking to do is have a balanced programme that actually will address the competitiveness matters, the environment matters, and also the wider rural communities. So,
Okay,
sure.
I'll leave it there in the meantime. Joe Byrne, Deputy Chairperson.
Mr. Chairman, again, I welcome the update on the situation. Given that there's no transfer from Pillar 1 to Pillar 2, the 227 million from Europe on their DP will have to be prioritised within the 6 priorities, and the balance will have to be sorted out within there, within the 3 overall objectives of competitiveness, rural economy, and the third one, which name I just forget at the moment. Given, however, that going for growth is largely going to be in the agri-food private sector development, am I right in saying that if the Minister can persuade the Executive to put, let's say, 250 million into the development of going for growth, that can be very much targeted on the private sector in relation to agri-related business development? Will that be under the same constraints from Europe?
Certainly, as we were saying earlier there, the competitiveness objective in the Rural Development Programme does tie in closely with what the aims and objectives are in relation to the going for growth in terms of the development of the agri-food sector.
But it is one of 6.
And in terms of the priorities, yeah, in the Rural Development Programme, I suppose that the going for growth recommendations and certainly the targets that are there, I would see as aims and objectives relating to sustainable growth. So from that point of view, there's certainly the competitiveness, which is if you look at the Rural Development Programme, there's priority 2,
Yes.
would fit against competitiveness, priority 3. Priority 1 in there is a cross-cutting priority that actually does link to competitiveness as well. But you also have, in terms of the sustainability aspect, then we're looking at priority 4, I think, primarily. So there's quite a link across the Rural Development Programme in terms of balance that might help to contribute to sustainable growth in the agri-food sector.
I think it's not unsurprising that there's such a link between the Rural Development Programme and the Agri-Food Strategy. Those 2 separate strands of work were ongoing at the same time. But the Rural Development Programme was developed in line with the needs assessment for all 3 objectives, for the agri-food, for the environment, and also for the broader rural. So it's not unsurprising that the same needs have come out in both strands of work. And it's a question of the extent to which the programme can actually address some of those needs. But it isn't just the one priority. There's actually 6 priorities within the programme. At least 5 of those we can see direct links across to the agri-food strategy. And it's a question of the extent to which the programme can address those. And if we can pull in additional funding, then yes, we could pull it into the programme. And yes, you're also right in that maybe we could do that outside the programme where it isn't subject to the same rules, but then you're into a whole lot of other issues, including state aid issues as well. So in some respects, there are advantages to bringing it inside the programme, and there's also some disadvantages to do that as well. But once we know what the funding is available for agri-food, we can certainly look at that and see, is it best inside the programme or is it not? And so in terms of the shape of the programme is broadly there. It's the size of the programme that we're just not sure of in terms of the budget, because it just means that there is a need identified there, particularly around a business or a capital investment scheme on farms. It's the size that scheme would be. We've known that from the current programme. We have a farm modernisation programme of 20 million that has been consistently oversubscribed every time we open that scheme. And if we had have had extra funds, we certainly could have gone down that route. So,
Chairman, can I just comment on supplementary?
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Does that mean then, Lorraine, that let's say there's X amount that now can be persuaded from the Executive, that more than 20 million per annum could be going into the farm building improvement scheme then? In other words, the executive and Dard would have sole discretion on a capital investment programme within the farm buildings.
Well, I mean, the scope would be there I mean, certainly within our proposals, we had extended the farm modernisation scheme into a 3-tier scheme with a higher tier up to 250k. Now, that is identified to a certain extent through the agri-food strategy as well. And I'm not unsurprised by that because it's an identified need. So what we would have to look at is the funds available within the programme and now decide, well, can we afford to do those 3 tiers, or do we pull it back to just the 1 tier again and look for additional funding, for agri-food to do those additional 2 tiers? And those are the kind of decisions that we really need to be looking at now.
So finally, does that mean that until we get the budget sorted out, we don't know where we're going?
We know the general shape of what's needed. I mean, what was in the document came out of 2 years of work within DARD and the stakeholder group, and a needs assessment and a SWOT analysis. So those are identified needs. Those schemes were identified as being needed. We just now need to look if we do it inside the programme, if we do it outside the programme. Those needs have not changed in any way as a result of the transfer decision. We still need to find the additional funding to address those needs. So it's more the size, but the shape, I would say, is there. But if we don't have the size, then we will have to prioritise.
Except just one comment, there will be 2 departments that could be involved on the Going for Growth project, not just one.
2 departments, are you thinking?
ETI as well as
That's
DARD.
right. DADI and DARD jointly are leading on the Agri-Food Strategy Board's work with Going for Growth. The recommendations.
Will that be a 50-50 relationship, or 75 to 25, or 80 to 20? What will it be?
Yeah, well, there's a whole range of recommendations that the board has made and that are addressed to particular departments.
Has that elephant in the room been addressed yet? What is the ratio likely to be?
Sorry?
Has that elephant in the room been addressed yet? What is the relationship ratio likely to be?
Yeah, in terms of how departments are responding to those recommendations, we have worked with other departments, and this is part of the draft response to Going for Growth. But departments have identified the areas where they would recognise they would have a lead on particular actions. In terms of there are actions addressed at various departments. As far as DARD's concerned, the biggest recommendation for DARD is to develop a farm business improvement scheme. So that particular one, yes, is with the DARD lead involved in it. But there are other actions for other departments to lead on.
Thanks, John.
Just on Deputy Chairperson's point there, now, as it refers in the Agri-Food to the improvement scheme, in the rural development consultation it talks about a business investment scheme. Is that the same idea? And if so, what are the reasons for a 3-tier approach? Because I know, Lorraine, you mentioned the 3-tier approach and having to rethink that depending on the size of budget. What are the actual benefits or downfalls of the 3-tier?
Yeah. Can I just sort of open it and then pass over to Lorraine? And that Farm Business Improvement Scheme that the Going for Growth, came out of Going for Growth recommendations, it's envisaged to be a sort of a package of assistance. So it's not just capital. There's other elements of support in there that the board were thinking about. And if we were responding to that, that might involve sort of training measures and mentoring and business development groups and so on. So it's not just the capital elements in the RDP. But and just to clarify on that one, so it's not just business investment scheme. I'll just invite Lorraine then to talk about the tiers. That you asked about.
The 3-tier approach came out of the policy development. Tier 1 was really seen as being most like the current farm modernisation programme and would work along the similar lines. So smaller grants, but less entry requirements, also work on the same principle of a select list of equipment and no procurement. Then tiers 2 and 3 was moving up the scheme. It was really designed to help those that wanted to invest in their own businesses. So it was on the amount of grant that they would be applying for. And the entry criteria for those would change. So in other words, as you got into the higher grant rate, you would expect people to actually have to do more and produce more to get the grant in that. Now, the tiers 2 and 3, I mean, for the tier 3, I think that went up to 250k of a grant. Now, it was quite well welcomed within the consultation response, but there was some concern around Tier 3 and in relation to a large amount of funding going to a smaller number of farms. Now, that's where the difference maybe comes between the RDP and the Agri-Food Strategy, because Agri-Food Strategy would certainly much want to see the finance going towards the larger farms, and yet an RDP is seen as something maybe that should have a larger number of beneficiaries. Now, what we've responded in the consultation to that is that while we accept their concerns, we think we could address those by ring-fencing the amounts of money in each tier so that the available budget for a future farm investment scheme wouldn't be certainly go to a smaller number of people. So you would set a certain budget for Tier 3, a certain budget for Tier 2 and a certain budget for Tier 1. And we did discuss that with the stakeholders at the meeting on the 15th, and that seemed to, they didn't sort of disagree with that at the meeting. But it's really a sliding scale of the more you were going to get in terms of grant and investment, there would be more requirement in terms of business planning. And we asked specific questions around that, the minimum amount of funding, the entry requirements, and we've got a lot of information there to work off when we start to draft the schemes. That will be helpful.
It's down, and forgive me for me, the actual scheme itself is 40% funding?
It's 40%. There is an opportunity to give. That's because of agricultural state aid rules, yes, and that's what's in the regulation. But there is scope to increase that up to 60% for young farmers. We can also give more for projects that are funded out of the European Innovation Partnership or cooperation type projects. So,
can I ask them, but if a farmer or a business can demonstrate that they could spend or match fund more,
yes,
on the ceiling?
And that came up actually in the discussions.
Are you stifling business to that degree?
But you have to demonstrate additionality, and you also have the added problem of having to do a sound economic appraisal, and the less grant you give, then is that really additional, because does that business actually need that funding in the first place? But it did come up even in the discussions on the PMG scheme about the bigger businesses, and that scope within, we have that within our gift to say, well, no, you can't have 40%, you're a bigger business, you can afford to invest a little more, and we could set upper thresholds for larger businesses. That decision has yet to be taken, but yeah, the scope is there.
Okay. Ron Swan?
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for your presentation. There's been mention that the transfers to Pillar 1 to Pillar 2 have been settled. There was I think it was a minister's statement on the 20th of December that she said she could go back and look for more monies in June of this year to be transferred with agreement from DEFRA. Has the department ruled that out completely?
We had clarification before, just before Christmas, about what the Commission's rules were in this area, and because there was a sort of a lack of clarity regarding whether there would be there would be two opportunities for member states to come back to make a decision, and or whether part of a member state could come back if another part had made a decision earlier. And the very clear advice that was obtained from the Commission was that a member state had to make the decision to make the transfer, and a member state had one opportunity to do that. So there was an opportunity to do that either by the 31st of December or an opportunity to do that in August 2014. And if the member state took that opportunity in December, it didn't then have a second go. Although if it didn't in December, it did have the opportunity to do it in August. So that was the clear clarification that we'd had before Christmas.
I noted with interest through some of the responses to the consultation that there was actually a reference that people thought that the department itself should deliver as much as the rural development programme as possible. I must say it did concern me, because I know some of our views in the department and how they handle other functions. Would the department have the ability or the desire to do that?
I think in the consultation we sought views, just as you're saying, we sought views on the extent to which we would involve external parties to deliver the programme, and what sort of mix, and particularly took views on that. In terms of the Commission, there is a requirement to use LEADER, and there's a minimum requirement, 5% of the funding to be delivered through LEADER. So we must at least do that. And then it's a matter of looking at what the best mix of delivery mechanisms is, and what can be done, what's practical to do, and what is actually the best use of monies to be able to deliver on the programmes. It ties in, there's certain sort of rules and constraints on the amount of administration that can be used towards delivery.
Well, the current cap on administration, what we call technical assistance, is 4%, but that's 4% of the EAFRD, or of the EU element. In the current programme, Leader is 20%. That's separate. This other 4% is what we can use to actually manage or deliver the programme. In the current programme, we fund an Axis One delivery agent, and the cost of that is met out of the programme. Other costs, such as the rural network, can be met from within the programme, but we don't. We actually fund that directly outside of the programme. And it does mean that if we go for a bigger programme, we are actually more constrained, because the 4% of if we had have had the transfer across, that would have given us in excess of 350 or 60 million euros, and we would have been able to use 4% of that. We're now limited to 4% of the 227. In terms of delivery, or what we can use within the programme to deliver. I think when we ask the question about which parts of the programme should be delivered externally and internally, I think the diagram we put in that consultation document made it very clear to stakeholders how much of the programme is actually currently delivered by DARD. It's well over 70 or 79%, and we actually took it as an endorsement of the department, because most people felt that the department, in many of the schemes we deliver with no difficulty whatsoever, and they were quite happy to see DARD, where they have the expertise, retain that expertise, particularly in the agri-environment schemes and LFA and other schemes, which there are no issues in terms of delivery. But it is something that, until we get the budget, and the budget is critical, we then need to look at how much we can afford to then use of that budget in external delivery. And an issue will be how much DARD can put to that itself in the current climate as well.
So worst case scenario is it's the 5% that's required by Europe?
The 5% of Leader, yes, is the other 4% is optional. You don't have to use that 4%, but the 5% is compulsory of whatever you put. You have to put through Leader.
Is that the 5% of the
It's 5% of the 227, and whatever match would come with that, obviously, as well. The Leader, once we get the amount of national to go with the EU, we'll be setting co-financing rates. So whatever the national is to match that will come with it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, William, you ready? Yep.
I suppose ready as maybe it's ever be. Sorry, I had to leave for a question. I was just pushed it right to the limit there. I have some concerns as to maybe the vague nature of the department in relation to the way forward. I think if we're, whether you're in business or in government, you need to be prepared to look at the issues, make decisions, and go for it. That, in my eyes, is not what's happening. If you're going to go to the executive with proposals, or the ministry or the department is, you know exactly what you intend to do and what the way forward is. And not been critical today, but listening to to yourselves today, I don't get that feeling that is the case. I have concerns in that regard. As far as the Rural Development Programme and the food strategy going for growth is concerned, I suppose in a way they're intertwined till a point. I would have thought that the smaller money, this is only a layperson, I was declaring interest, been a farmer myself. The smaller amounts of money to me in the smaller schemes would look wise, maybe going one way, maybe in the larger schemes, maybe the other. But I think in the past, I think rural development under the Leader or the current lags has been quite difficult, and procurement and all the rest has been a big issue there for people to draw down funding and get schemes up and running. So I think it's vitally important that the department takes control and delivers most, if not most, of the schemes themselves. That would be my view. If you go to England, Scotland, Wales, and even the Republic of Ireland, have schemes going for now for some time, and there doesn't seem to be that eagerness or willingness by our department to move forward and, as I say, identify what needs to happen and try and move forward. I think in relation to the priority 2, and that is enhancing the farm viability, like this, for instance, has been over the last number of years we've had a lot of bad weather, there's need for reseeding land drainage, fencing schemes. There's a lot of schemes that would be required, but there doesn't seem to be any clear direction from the department in relation to moving forward, and I think it is vital that we do that. I mean, in relation also to food processing, is it not vital that the department works in conjunction with DADI in relation to that as a way forward too? I mean, why should the department be doing one thing and maybe DADI doing another? And I'd just like to hear your response in regard to my concerns that the department has no clear strategy or no clear vision for the way forward.
Yeah, I suppose, yes, at the stage we're at now is having completed the consultation process, so that, yeah, we're not at the end, and but that's sort of one part of it that we have completed at this point. So, what, in terms of taking out of that, how we prioritise and going forward, I think there was no, from across consultees, there wasn't a clear sense of where to prioritise, because there was broad support for the range of proposed measures that are there. Certainly I think what's coming through in our discussions with the stakeholder consultation forum as well is that forum does want to see a programme that addresses the needs that have been identified. This is a broad range of stakeholders. The needs that are identified, and for that programme to be targeted at those needs and to be a balanced programme. So that's the challenge for going forward, and regardless what amount of funding is going to be there, yes, that's something that we want to have at the end, is a balanced programme that targets the actual needs. So there may well be hard work to be done there on prioritisation of what's in the programme, because the programme, if we cost it based on how we've consulted, we don't have sufficient funding to deliver a programme on the basis of how we've consulted. But it will be a matter of looking at all the priorities and the funds available, and certainly that's the next stage, and that's the work that we're engaged in and we're continuing to do now. In terms of the, I'll just pick up on some of the points that you were making there about talking to other departments and working with other departments, and to sort of ensure that we're doing something that's maybe not, complementary or not duplicating or what other departments should be doing. You mentioned the processing investment grant, and certainly that's one we're talking to, and we'll have further discussions with Invest NI on that, just to look at that particular area to see just what's the best way forward in this. There's since we went out to consult, there's some further clarity that we've obtained from the Commission about the scope of that nature of programme, and so that there is a bit further policy development work that we want to do in that area, and we'll do that over the next while, and then have further discussions with Invest NI. So
can I ask, Claire, I'll interrupt you, I'm wondering why you meant again, but what specific scheme are you talking about?
It's the processing.
It's the processing, and it's the replacement for the processing and marketing grant scheme. It's called the Processing Investment Development Grant Scheme.
Processing, yes, tier 2.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, priority 3. It's in priority 3. Yeah.
This is one where the stakeholders did have a few concerns about the higher tier, and it certainly did come out in some of the consultation events as well about the PMG scheme. But we realised then after, when we put the detail into the consultation document, we got more guidance from the EU after that on the scope of the scheme, and it's actually better than we thought. So we have actually responded in the document by saying that we're now having more discussions with Invest NI about that scheme and the shape of a future scheme, so that it really addresses what we need it to do. and that we would take a revised scheme back to the stakeholder consultation group at a future date for them to have a look at.
Okay. William, you're wanting to come back.
Okay,
Can I just say Ian has to go out, so I'm going to let Ian come in.
That's okay. Go ahead, Ian. Go
That's
ahead.
okay.
Thanks, William. No, I just want to ask you, the Balmoral show last year, you know, we had Arlene Foster and the Minister, the Guard Minister, you know, they both commissioned the strategy, if you like, you know, for going the agri-food, going for growth and all of that, right? Would the department envisage there that a joint application or a bid, you know, goes to the executive for additional funding?
Well, the way we'd envisage it in terms of actual bids, Going for Growth has identified a whole range of recommendations, for some of them for government, some of them for industry, but in terms of the government ones, there's recommendations addressed to particular departments, and departments have been working to identify which of those recommendations would be for their own department's lead on. In terms of going forward with specific bids then, you know, I would envisage that departments will, if there's a particular piece of work that a department's doing, there would be a particular bid from that department going forward. That's the way I would envisage that. But it's still, obviously the executives still have to consider the draft response to going for both. So.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Ian, no problem. Back to William.
Okay, and Colette, you're saying that you need to go to the executive and see what money's available and all the rest, but I mean, if I, as a farmer, I've been in business all my life, if I went to my bank manager tomorrow and said, how much money will you give me? I'm not sure what I want to do. I don't think I'd have much of a chance. I mean, ideally, you need to know exactly what you need, what you want to do before you go to the executive. I think that to me, you have a little chance of getting the proper result if you go the other way about it. I mean, I know in business, if you went the other way about it, you wouldn't go too far. You know, I think it's vital that you know exactly, or near enough, where you are, what you need, and what you want to do. And I think if you don't do that, I think you're in a much more weaker position to, you know, if you go and say like, what can we get? What do you got for us? I mean, you know, it's not much of a way to go about the future of the largest industry in Northern Ireland. I think you needs to be, I think, clearly know where you're going. I think. I mean, I'm told, by farmers that I know in the mainland in Scotland, and farmers I know in Scotland especially, and I mean, the schemes are now for a number of years, the last 2 or 3 years, very, very good schemes, and has been a big benefit to farmers. And I still think the department should be looking at other areas to see how they roll out. We seem to be very much bound up in bureaucracy and red tape when we go to provide our schemes, and whether they're small or large. That's my view.
I suppose really the proposals are where we are in terms of this is, you know, in going forward, and knowing how, well, we know how much, sort of an estimated idea of how much those schemes would involve if we were to go forward with them all. But really that is, I suppose, the desired programme. You know, that is, those are the proposals that have been developed to meet the needs that were identified, and it's been through quite lengthy consultation in terms of working with the key stakeholders as we develop those, and then getting the public consultation views on them. So it's been fairly well tested, and in terms of a reaction from the broader stakeholders on those schemes. So I think those schemes people are recognising would meet the needs. Now we're not there yet in terms of having to take that sort of draft programme to the Commission and get the Commission's views on it. Yeah. But it's, as Lorraine said earlier, the shape of the scheme, the shape of the desired RDPs there, it's very much just down to the scale of it. Yeah. I think we are quite clear on the sort of shape of where we'd like to be in terms of the shape of it. It's
in relation to future agri-environment schemes, should it not be rolled out to all areas, to all farmers in Northern Ireland, not just to some? I strongly feel that every farmer should have it should be available to all farmers in Northern Ireland.
Well, I think on the agri-environment there are proposals for a two-tier scheme, you know, for a broader scheme and also for a higher level scheme which would be on the designated or protected sites. And certainly we're working with the NGOs quite closely and with NIEA on the shape of that future scheme. Just on one other point about on the schemes that we went out to consult on, I think it's worth also pointing out that nobody identified any gaps in what we had in there. Nobody came forward with, because we had developed these schemes internally and then went to the stakeholder consultation group and worked with them over a period of 4 meetings before we went out to consultation. Nobody came forward with any schemes that they felt we hadn't covered. And I think it's something, you know, generally there was good consensus within the document about what was there. Where you won't see consensus is obviously around things like the Pillar 1, Pillar 2 transfer, and where the prioritisation was very sectoral based, you know, as we expect that to be to a certain degree. But there were no gaps identified.
Okay, right. Ian Buchanan, or sorry, Tom Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair.
He's a farmer too.
New member.
Most of the issues that I was going to raise has been covered, but it seems to me that the department is very hung up on the fact that the agri-food in some way must be partly delivered from Pillar 2. And it seems to be that the department are so hung up on that they can't look outside the box to see what other funding could be made available or what other proposals could be brought forward. Questions have been asked today regarding what discussions there has been or what interaction has been with DETI so far as the agri-food strategy is concerned, and what proposals perhaps has been made with regard to the delivery of that financially, whether it's 50-50 or whatever. We haven't got no clear indication as to really what proposals has been gone forward from the department with DETI in order to seek to deliver this. We don't seem to have a department that's capable of looking outside the box to see where other funding can be got from, and we don't seem to be able to get any other proposals as to what the department or where they're looking to or what proposals they're seeking to put forward to the executive. And maybe we could get some more clarity on that, on some of those particular issues.
I suppose going for growth in response to that, and I think it's probably getting back and mentioned earlier that the recommendations from the board actually do tie in well with the needs that are identified for the Rural Development Programme. So, and as we're at a time where we're designing the Rural Development Programme for the future up to 2020, it is an appropriate time to sort of try and shape that so that it is going to help to deliver on those recommendations. So that's why they sort of do fit very well together in terms of the aims and objectives. So we consulted on that basis, and certainly we got a sort of positive reaction on that. So I think it's just in terms of affordability, and you're right, and how do we bring additional monies in, and where do we identify that? For the going for growth recommendations generally, departments have been working together on looking at the recommendations that came from the Agri-Food Strategy Board, and on considering what the response would be to those recommendations that are addressed to government. And so there's been quite a bit of work done on that, and sort of identify which departments would lead on which particular actions that were recommended by the board. So there's been a lot of work done on that, and that is separate to the Rural Development Programme. But out of that, some of the actions, and not all of the actions for DARD we're not seeking to deliver on all of them through the Rural Development Programme. But one of the key ones would be the Farm Business Improvement Scheme, and it would fit quite well with the way we're proposing to develop the Rural Development Programme. Now, not all of it may be appropriate to deliver through the Rural Development Programme, and there may be other things done outside of that would contribute to the Farm Business Improvement Scheme. But where it would contribute, then it sort of makes a lot of sense for that to be how we would deliver on the recommendations. But in terms of the funding being brought to go and for growth, clearly there are certain actions that were addressed to DARD, other actions addressed to other departments, and they'll need to look at how how they might fund those actions in response to the board recommendations. From DARD's point of view, we have had discussion with other departments, and we'll continue to do that. We're represented on the DFP-led working group that's engaged with other departments who are developing EU programmes, and so we're continuing to work on them. So the thinking behind that was that that the programmes would be developed in a sort of holistic way in Northern Ireland, and there wouldn't be duplication. I think that's fair to say, and that complementary where possible. So we continue on that work. It was said in terms of the processing investment scheme there. We've had discussions with Invest NI, and we'll continue with further discussions there. So we're certainly seeking to, we're exploring the scope for other options in terms of funding. I think important to say that, and to say that we're not actually, we're just at a certain stage in the process here. So we've completed the consultation. We haven't got to the end stage of what the programme is going to be, but that is the next piece of work. And what we need to do now, having completed the consultation, having got the responses in there, is look very carefully at what the priorities are going to be. If the funding's going to be limited, or if there's going to be more funding, then that means the size can be bigger. But that's the sort of next stage of work, and so that's where we'll continue to work through that with other departments and with stakeholders as well.
Yeah, but the difficulty is this: if you don't have a blueprint of what you want funding for, you have nothing to present to the executive or to any other body as to what you want the funding for. And what you're saying is you're going to wait to see what funding is, and then you're going to deliver around it. You need the blueprint set out as exactly what it is that you want to deliver, and then present that blueprint then for the funding to be forthcoming for it. And it appears to me that you're not doing it in that direction. So therefore, it's like what Wally Irwin said earlier. If he went to the bank looking for money but had no proposals as to what he wanted it for, then he's not going to get it. And this is exactly the same. It appears to me that you have no blueprint or no strategy set out and drawn up to present to the executive or any other body to say this is what we need to deliver, and this is how much money we need for it. That's not there, and in the absence of that, I can't see how you're going to go forward and request extra finance of anyone or any other body for. You have no mechanism for it.
Well, I think really broadly what we do want in the programme is what we've consulted on. So, I mean, we're going to be using the proposals that we've consulted on. We're going to be now using those to develop the draft programme that will go to the Commission. And so that actually is the blueprint. Now, there will be further detailed work to be done on that, and actually that's work that's underway and we've already started. But it's taking the shape of the programme that we have there now currently, having got it through the consultation, and actually now translating that into an actual more detailed programme. But basically that is the shape of the programme. And we do know what's in it. Now, in terms of scale, and how much of that we can afford, it's really then that's where we sort of limit how much of that we can afford. But we know what it is we're looking for in terms of a balanced programme across the priority, and in terms of even, I mean, I know that there was sort of a question about some of these smaller programmes, are they all sort of equally as important in there? And I think that was raised earlier, but. A lot of these individual schemes actually link very well together as sort of like a package of support for farmers, and there's the capital investment scheme, but there's also training that sort of is part of, it's not capital investment on its own, but there's training for farmers, or there's the business development, the discussion groups, which is knowledge transfer, which links to the capital investment. So they're not sort of like individual. They don't sort of stand alone necessarily as individual components of a scheme, but they'll fit very well together. But I think that's the next stage of detailed work, is developing the programme that goes to the Commission, and it's then getting some sort of Commission feedback on that. Lorraine, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't accept that the proposals aren't there. I mean, I think they are very clearly, and they're very clearly set out in the consultation document. We have 6 priorities. Within each of those priorities, we set out what we intended to do to address those priorities. You know, in priority 1, which was innovation and knowledge transfer, we set out 5 schemes there. Some of them are quite small in value, and in fact, probably what the committee wasn't aware of was when we came to you, when we launched the consultation document, we then subsequently, around about August, put onto the website an indicative costings document, and that was to help people to prioritise. Now, it did give a sliding scale of what we thought those schemes could be worth. And that was to help people to sort of really see the potential value, including in there a capital investment scheme, which was in that time in excess of 100 million. There were 3 schemes there set at an excess of 100 million AE, farm business development, less favoured areas, and so they were banded together to sort of show the importance. But as Colette says, some of these smaller schemes are actually vitally important to webbing the whole thing together, because innovation and knowledge transfer sits at the heart of the programme and links into each of the other priorities. I mean, we have a 3 clear schemes there to address competitiveness, 2 schemes on the food side, a range of schemes on forestry. We also had a new scheme, a nutrient efficiency scheme, to include which to include soil testing and to improve land. So, I mean, and a range of schemes set there against it. So we do know what we want to achieve. That came out of the needs assessment, the SWOT analysis. We have indicative costings beside those. Internally, we know what we need to do to address those, and we now then need to take it to the next stage and see, well, if, what we can get in terms of additional funding to address those. And if we don't get the additional funding, then we have to look at the prioritisation within that to see which schemes will fall out and which ones stay in. And that may not be just based on cost, it'll be based on impact, and that's what our evaluators are there to help us do as well. Because not only is there a needs assessment and SWOT analysis, there's also what's called an intervention logic to go through that the Commission expect us to go through, and that's how much you put in, what you get out the other end of that. And we are doing the intervention logic for all of these schemes as well. So it's a considerable amount of money, and yes, it's frustrating that we can't get the final, because really to get us to progress, the budget is the key thing, and then we know where we're going with the programme.
But I go back to my original question, and that is the timescale for when, and I take your point because I've read the document, read the consultation document, I've read the responses, and I can see the actual schemes that you talk about. But when are you then going to cost them up to the executive? And when are you going to be able to do that? What's the time scale? And then how long will Europe allow you to do that?
Well, I think in terms of the transition between programmes, we're in a far better place this time than we were previously, because the transition regulations allow us a great deal of flexibility. We can continue to commit under Axis 1 and 3 right up until 2015, and we do have budget left because we were always applying N+2, so there'll be no obvious funding gap there. In relation to Axis 2, obviously the agri-environment historical spend will transfer over, and we can proceed at risk until a new programme is approved. The Commission has also given us some flexibility, not for Axis 3, but in the transition regulation there is flexibility under Axis 1 to commit under old rules and new money. So there is even a way to do that. So in other words, you can practically live out of the ad hoc transitional regulation for a year. And it would be better in some respects to use that flexibility and to get this right, as opposed to rush through this and then get it wrong, especially when there will be no obvious funding gap on the ground to those. And it's not a question of it's also a question of when we get a programme approved to when we get it off the ground. Because you could get a programme approved and get it off the ground the next day. Last time we had a programme approved in 2007, in July, we opened one scheme in November, and it was nearly another year before we opened the scheme. So it's not, the key is not in the, yes, it's good to get it approved, but the key is getting them off the ground and getting them opened. And if that happens one day after it's approved, that might be a better result if you spend the time to get the programme right in the first place. We obviously don't want to do, and we were obviously looking, this is just one of 6 EU programmes. It's not the only EU programme. And obviously ERDF, ESF, Interreg, Peace, Fisheries are all all being developed at the same time. and we'll be looking to how those programmes and the process that they use in terms of getting approval, not just at EU, but through the executive if that's needed as well. So obviously the transfer decision has set us back a bit, but we now need to look at, where, and that is a process. We had agreed to come back at this stage on the consultation response, but we do accept that it's still a bit early for us on the budget, I would say.
Joe wants in too, so I'm going to ask you to be concise in your answers if that's possible for the next 5 minutes, because that's what we've got. But two elements in the room that have to be tackled: A and C. Where will it be paid? And that has the potential, of course, the same as the investment scheme or the improvement scheme, to blow all the funding out of the water, basically. So A and C, where is the department minded to fund it from? Pillar 1, Pillar 2, and then also, can the LAGs operate in a low economy of scale? In other words, can the LAGs really be asked to deliver £2 million of funding in their area? And how do you see that working? And then I'll bring in Joe for his.
On the ANC, the ANC matter was sort of covered as well in the public consultation on Pillar 1, and that is closed. It's on the 17th of January. A huge number of consultation responses came in to that consultation, as you're probably aware, big numbers. And those are being considered currently. So I think the consultation responses, the intention would be to have a look at those that have come in on Pillar 1, as well as any responses that we've had back on Pillar 2 consultation, before a decision's made on that. So at this stage, we're not at that point, and I understand that officials will be coming to the committee to make a presentation on the Pillar 1 consultation.
But again, ANC is mentioned in this document, and it is clear that from Europe now they have clarified the position that it is an income support measure.
Yeah.
But it's mentioned in there as well because we were still going to be funding 1 year at least out of the current programme, so it has to be included in there. Possibly also compensation payments for those that fall out of the designation. So it has a foot in both Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. It's just the extent to the size that it will, if it's all or partially. Okay. And then the LAGs at priority 6 with a low budget. Can it work? Is the economy skills there, or is it just pure bureaucracy then to spend a very little amount of money? And then I'll bring in Joe for his questions. I know he's keen to get in.
I think in terms of the number, what we had proposed in the consultation was that we would look at the sort of new structures in the councils and sort of match the sort of numbers of LAGs. It could be 11 LAGs, say, in line with the new council structure. But we said also that would we're open to looking at clustering those. So I suppose then that would depend on the scale of economies and so on, and what's the best way. So we didn't rule that out. So I think again down to the amount of budget that would be available and what would be the efficient and effective way.
Has the department minded on a percentage? 19% last term?
No, we haven't. No, at this stage, no. And I think that decision hasn't been made as yet, and I think that's part of the overall decisions then. On the
I'll bring in Joe.
Yeah, Chairman. I have some sympathy for the two ladies today, actually, after listening to the presentation. Can I ask, when were you people, as senior civil servants, aware of the unilateral declaration to go for 7%?
Well, the minister made her decision and announced that on the 20th of December. So it was, that was the sort of date by which.
So nobody knew until the 20th?
Yes, that she made her decision just before her.
We knew on the 19th, that evening of the 19th. In fact, we were still there preparing the written statement late on the 19th, because that all went up on the 20th, and that was when we knew.
And it was DEFRA really had asked for decisions to be made within UK authorities by that date, so that they would be in a position to notify the Commission.
That's fine, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, we have to go back to Chamber for the rest of the reservoir debate, and I don't want to leave you here, and I don't know that any members have any other questions. So you can go, and we'll not call you back. The committee will have to come back for 10 minutes just to finish off correspondence, one thing or another. But I suppose if I could,
you could get it cleared in 5 minutes.
If I could, well, Now, if I could just hold on to you for a couple more minutes, just to be brief. Within the document, it talks about European innovation partnerships, an innovation broker. It talks about development groups, which are going to be bodies, basically men, women. Who will select these people to represent these bodies? And then what qualifications will be used in deciding who sits on them?
Yeah. Well, in relation to the innovation broker, the EIP is a compulsory part of the programme. We can't not do it. We have to do it. And we're currently looking at how we would like to bring forward maybe 4 or 5 good projects, rather than what the Commission would like to see is where farmers and researchers get together and come up with the problem. We'd like this to work, so we'd like to start with, in the first few years, actually find a couple of good projects that are quite close to, in development stage. So in selecting an innovation, a broker is really there to work up the project proposal and to keep the group together. The skills will very much depend on the actual project itself. We don't see one broker. There may be part of a time of a number of brokers, because these are going to be very specialist projects. And we'll have to set the selection criteria for those. Now, on the knowledge transfer on the business development groups, the Commission are very clear in the regulation that we have to set certain elements for the money is actually paid to the knowledge provider. And so there is we have to make sure that we're happy with the level of qualifications that these people will have to do that. We did ask within the document about selection, and now I know that in the South they're proposing the same scheme again as well, and we're in discussion. We're sort of having the policy people for both are having discussions about how they're going to implement that on both sides of the border, because they've obviously had experience of doing this before, and it would be good to have a look at there as well. But I think what we need to do is first of all decide on what the focus of these discussion groups is going to be, and then that will determine how the selection for those will work. But the programme, we have to write into the programme what the selection criteria are. We have to be open about those.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to have to stop, because we're going to have to go into. So again, thank you very much for your time and your presentation and your answers here today on what is a very important issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, we will suspend, but we will have to ask you to come back for 10 minutes at the most after the debate in Reservoir in order just to finish off. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, just to wrap up then, we've had a very good day of business. Agenda item number 7 then is correspondence. Can I refer members to correspondence received at pages 87 to 111? Are members content to action the correspondence as suggested on the index sheet at page 86, or are any members wanting to raise any particular issue? Members, okay, agreed then?
Agreed.
Agenda item number 8 then is the forward work programme. Can I refer members to the forward work programme at pages 113 to 120? Can I refer members to the draft press release at pages 121 to 123 regarding the committee stage of the Reservoirs Bill? Are members content for the press release to issue? Can I also advise members that the signposting ad calling for evidence for the Reservoirs Bill will be in the 3 main papers this week. The estimated costs associated with this are £750. Are members content?
Agreed, John.
Agreed.
Okay. Can I then refer members to the draft programme for the Appy visit on the 13th of February 2014 at pages 1 to 4? Are members content with the programme as suggested? Can I advise members then that a visit pack will issue next week on it, if members are content? Yep. Just on that issue, members, just to raise, I don't know if I brought it up last week or not, but I'll bring it up now just in case. There'll be a young fella shadowing me, if that's okay with the committee, that he would sit in on that. Okay, can I seek agreement then for the forward work programme? Members agreed?
Yep.
Agenda item number 9 then is any other business. Are there any other business issues members want to raise? If no, then date and time of next meeting will take place on Tuesday the 11th of February 2014 at 1:30 p.m. in room 30 Parliament Buildings. I declare the meeting adjourned. Okay members, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the